Hello, 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 my loves. As always, I hope that this video finds you well and in excellent spirits. So, welcome to another edition of the Astro Room. And today we are talking all about the upcoming full moon in Capricorn. All right. So, get comfy, get a snack, get a drink, maybe even get a pen and paper so you can jot some things down because we are learning everything that you need to know about the upcoming full moon in Capricorn. All right. So if you're joining me here live this afternoon, thank you so much for tuning in. I sincerely appreciate you. Say hi on your way in and hit that like button, please. And thank you. And if you're watching this on the replay, I appreciate you just as much. Hopefully, you get everything that you're looking for in this broadcast. And if that is the case, then hit that subscribe button, that notification bell, and that like button. All right. So I think I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Maybe this is our first time meeting. And if so, my name is Mel. I am wow. I'm supposed to, okay, there we go. Hi, my name is Mel. I'm the founder of divinefeminineworks. I'm a professional astrologer and I help people unlock their divinity and discover their magic. So, of course, if this is our first time meeting, welcome. And as always, if you are returning, welcome back. So, this channel is everything astrology, spirituality, and manifestation. So, if those are the things you like, if those are the things you love, or if those are the things you want to learn more about, don't forget to hit that subscribe button as well as that notification bell so you will always know when I'm coming out with new content. All right, all right, all right. Hello, Monarcha. Thank you so much for joining me here on the live this afternoon. So, like I said, we're talking all about the upcoming full moon in Capricorn, all right? And this full moon is going down on Friday, June 21st at 9:07 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, all right? And this is an interesting full moon. Not just because, well, let me rephrase that. So this is an interesting two moon for two reasons. I'm sorry. Let's try that again. This is an interesting full moon for two reasons. Number one, it coincides with the summer solstice. So here in the Northern Hemisphere, on or around June 20th or June 21st, we have the summer solstice, which means that it is the part of the year, and it's actually the day of the year when we have the most light. All right. It is the longest day of the year here in the Northern Hemisphere. All right. So that's one. Number two, this is the first of two full moons that will be in the same sign. So we have this upcoming full moon in Capricorn happening on June 21st. And then in July, we have another full moon in Capricorn. All right. So what does that mean exactly? It means that you are going to want to take a look at where Capricorn is in your natal chart, because this is not only where everything is going down, right? Where all of this energy is converging. It also means that there is going to be a certain theme, Capricorn theme, that is going to be emphasized for you between June and July. It's almost like the universe is putting a stamp or an exclamation point on a certain theme in your life. All right. So it's really important that you pay attention to what transpires. And pay attention is sort of the phrase that pays with this full moon, because if we're talking about manifestation, right? The full moon phase is when things come to fruition. So I always say that it's really about observation when it comes time for the full moon. Okay. It's really about, how should I say this? Taking a look at what transpires, what comes to light, okay? Because the full moon is an illumination time. It's a time of enlightenment. It's a time when the moon is the brightest in the sky, so that it shows you what's been hidden, okay? It shows you sort of things that have come to a culmination, what's been hidden, all that good stuff. So it's really a time of observation, okay? And so in full transparency, you may keep hearing that beeping, right? My smoke alarm has something going on with it that I forgot to disarm. So I'm going to step away real quick to disarm that, because I know you don't want to hear that sound throughout this entire live. All right. So what I will do is I'm just going to pause this real quick, and then I will be right back. Okay. right, my loves, I'm back. Sorry, it was super distracting. It was really getting me like off track, and I know that you don't want to hear that. And then all of my stuff is going off at the same time, so this is just really lovely. But that's the whole purpose of lives, right? We're live. This is unedited, unfiltered, all that good stuff. So let's let me turn some of these things off. Let's do that first. And you have to understand, I'm a Virgo sun. So all of this stuff that's happening right now is like grating my last nerve. And there's a part of me that's like, wow, how am I not able to turn these off? Hold on a second. All right. So I think we're finally ready. Okay. All right. So back to the subject at hand, which is the upcoming full moon in Capricorn. So, like I said, it's going to be a time when we are observing and observing in a major way. Because not only is the full moon the time of complete illumination, it's also coinciding with the summer solstice. So there is going to be this complete enlightenment. Like things are really going to become clear. Things are going to become illuminated, and whatever has been in the dark is most definitely going to see the light of day and the light of night, right? Because we've got the longest day of the year, plus we have the full moon, okay? So, this particular full moon, the first of the two full moons in Capricorn, it's going to be this interesting mix of beginnings and endings because Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. Saturn has everything to do with culmination. Okay. And in a minute, I'll explain more about the energy of Capricorn. But suffice it to say, this particular full moon is like an ending and a beginning wrapped up into one. And it's going to require a bit of change from you in the sense that perhaps what you've been relying on in the past isn't working anymore. And now it's time for a new sort of foundation. Or if you're looking to establish a new system or a new structure in your life, meaning if you're intentional about change, this is going to be the great time to implement it, particularly wherever Capricorn is in your natal chart. All right. So, without getting into too much detail right now, let's get into the basics first of all and talk about full moons generally, Capricorn energy, and all that good stuff. All right. No. All right, so let's talk basics. So, again, this full moon in Capricorn is going down on Friday, June 21st at 9:07 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it is going down at 1 degree of Capricorn. Okay, this is very important with respect to the theme of this particular full moon in Capricorn. So, let's talk about full moons generally. All right, now, if you're not new to this channel, I'm pretty sure you know the energy signature of full moons, right? It's all about endings, it's all about culmination. It's all about illumination, right? If we're talking about the manifestation process, the full moon is when your manifestation comes to fruition. I always like to use the analogy of like running a marathon. And this particular analogy rings so true for Capricorn energy. Marathons are long as hell. They're 26 miles, right? And so the new moon phase would be when, shoot the gun in the air and you start off running. You know you have a long road ahead of you, but you also know that there's going to be a finish line at some point, and your goal is to reach that finish line. Now, when we talk about the full moon phase, we're talking about actually crossing the finish line, getting that medal, getting the recognition for having run a 26-mile race, right? It has been long, it's been arduous, but you're finally done. It's your time in the sun. You're taking pictures, people are congratulating you. That is the essence of the full moon, and very much so the essence of the full moon in Capricorn. Capricorn energy, it's stable, right? Because it is an earth sign. So it's all about the material, it's all about success, and it's all about achievement. Hence why I use the analogy of running a marathon. Reaching the finish line of a marathon is a mighty feat, to say the least, right? So it's really about this success and this achievement. It's graduation, if you will. Right. I think on Monday, when I did the weekly astro forecast, I talked about this full moon in Capricorn kind of being like graduation, right? Worked hard for however many years up until, your last year of high school. And now you're graduating and you're entering a whole new level. And that level is college. So when we talk about Capricorn energy, we talk about success, we talk about graduation, we talk about moving up to a new level. And this is exactly what this full moon in Capricorn is offering to us energy wise. It's a new level, it's leaving behind the old and moving into something new. Now, Capricorn is also what's known as a cardinal sign, meaning that it starts things. So even though Saturn, which is the planetary ruler of Capricorn, even though Saturn is sort of all about endings, Capricorn in itself is about beginnings. And because this full moon is happening at the first degree of Capricorn, this is why I said it's like a beginning and an ending wrapped up into one. Okay. So, how is this perhaps going to play out for you in reality? Right. So, perhaps you've been working at something for a long time. And again, you're going to want to look at where Capricorn is in your natal chart because this will let you know where this not only where this energy is going down, but how it's going to play out for you. So let's say you've got Capricorn as your 10th house, which would make you an Aries rising, right? So Capricorn is your 10th house. Your 10th house is the house of career. So let's say depending on how old you are, perhaps you've been in the same job for a long time. Maybe this was the job that you got straight out of college and you started off at the bottom, you worked your way up, and before you know it, now it's 10 years later. And you find perhaps that at this full moon in Capricorn, you're getting a promotion. Perhaps it's a major promotion, right? Not just in title, but with more money. Maybe now you're a supervisor. Maybe now you are getting this corner office. Maybe now you have a team that you are leading. You see how that works? It's a step up, right? It's a new level. It's sort of a new graduation. Plus, it's recognition for hard work that you've been doing over the long haul. Okay. So it's really important that you observe what is ending. Because a lot of times, and I'm pretty sure that you can relate to this, especially if we have a long term goal, especially if we have something that we've been working on for a while, we can really get stuck in the work. We can get stuck in doing the day to day, doing what we need to do. That when these milestones occur, and I feel that this full moon in Capricorn is going to be a time of milestones. I feel like this is going to be a time when you really have to stop and smell the roses. You really have to appreciate how far you've come because this full moon is going to show you just that. Okay. So it's really important that you observe. Now, one of the other sort of energy signatures of Capricorn is karma. Now, you'll have a lot of other astrologers who are talking about how this is a very karmic moon, and it can be. But I don't want you to get caught up in the idea of karma in terms of good, bad, getting what you deserve. Karma is literally cause and effect. And we talk about karma in relation to Capricorn and thereby Saturn energy. This is really like what sort of energy have you been putting out, particularly for a long period of time? That is the exact energy that you can expect to get back. So, whatever you've been putting out, whatever you've been working toward, whatever you've been putting your energy and effort toward, now you're going to see the fruits of those labors, for better or for worse. And whether you deem it good or bad is really not that important. It's just more so letting you know that, okay, clearly this is how I've been using my energy. Clearly, this is what I've been working on. This is what I've been focusing on. And now this is the plant that sprouted. This is the finish line that I'm crossing. So it's really important that you observe. All right. Now, the last thing that I will say about Capricorn energy is that it can be very sobering. in the sense that because Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, Saturn is known as a malefic planet, okay? Meaning that it doesn't necessarily always feel good, and it's kind of the opposite of positive. Now, I don't necessarily like to call it negative because it all depends on how you define negative, right? However, Saturn is very much about, how would I say? Saturn is very much about showing you the reality of things. And that can be sobering, can be a little depressing sometimes too, right? Because sometimes we have this idea of how we want things to be, or maybe we're being a little delusional with respect to how things are. But this full moon is going to show you the real. It's going to show you how things truly are, for better or for worse. Now, while it may not feel good in the moment, it's great information to show you just how to change or even what to change. And this goes back to what I was saying before about this full moon being endings and beginnings wrapped up into one. Because Saturn is the culmination. Saturn is sort of the circle, sort of closing in on itself. But then this full moon is going down at the first degree of Capricorn, which is all about new beginnings, okay? So it's really important that you observe what's going on, appreciate yourself, give yourself a pat on the back for whatever is, coming to a culmination, and see and allow yourself to see things for how they really are. You don't necessarily have to live in the reality of the situation, right? But use that as information to steer you in the direction of where you want to go. All right. So now that we've talked about the basics, let's get into the numerology and see exactly how that lends to this story called the full moon in Capricorn. All right. So I love looking at the numerology because it always gives us more information on what is going on. And so, like I said, this full moon in Capricorn is going down at the first degree. So this full moon is sponsored by the number one. Okay. So one is initiation, it's new beginnings. It's change, right? It's embarking on a new journey. There's so much possibility inherent in the numerology of the number one. So, apart from just observing what's going on with this full moon, you kind of want to figure out, well, what direction do I want to go in now? What can I start at this time? Now that a certain chapter has come to a close, now that I'm seeing things for what they truly are, and now that I am elevating, I'm graduating, and I'm going to a new level, what is it that I want? You're not going to start working on this right now, but you're going to start to understand, you're going to start to fixate your mind to what it is that you want come the next new moon cycle. So you're going to have 2 weeks really between this full moon in Capricorn and the new moon in Cancer that's going down in July for you to figure out what do you want, where do you want to go, and who you want to be. All right. So, in terms of the numerology, number one has the energy signature of motivation and momentum. This is like revving up your engine and picking a destination. Where do you want to go? It's pioneering and it's groundbreaking. Okay. Now, I'm getting ahead of myself, but one of the messages from Spirit with respect to this full moon in Capricorn is breakthrough. This is going to be a time of breakthrough. It's groundbreaking, it's new. So, expect a shift in energy, a dynamic shift in energy at that, right? Like it's really about perhaps going in a completely different direction, starting a complete new job, starting a complete new structure, believing in something completely new, right? I cannot stress enough the word new with this full moon. So allow yourself to be moved. Even if you find that the ground is shaking underneath you, right? I literally just said number one has to do with groundbreaking energy. Allow it. Perhaps what is shifting, perhaps what is changing, perhaps what is moving likely will not serve you anymore. And maybe it served you well in the past, but now we're onto some new shit. So allow what needs to change and allow yourself to change with it. All right. It's pregnant with possibility. That's what I like to say. The number one is pregnant with possibility. So again, the next 2 weeks, beginning at this full moon in Capricorn, is going to be a time where you figure out exactly what it is that you want. But this is the thing that I want to stress the most, especially with this full moon in Capricorn. The number one pushes us to look at our current circumstances and realize that we have the power to turn them into anything that we wish. I'm going to repeat that because it's super important. The number one pushes us to look at our current circumstances, which is what the full moon in Capricorn is going to do, and realize that we have the power to turn them into anything that we wish. Self-explanatory. So definitely take heed to that message at this full moon, all right? And the number one is also very independent. And this is going to require a little bit of explanation. So settle in. Saturn and Capricorn have a lot to do with tradition. Okay. And I think you've heard me say this before. Tradition is really peer pressure from people who are no longer alive, right? Things have been done a certain way. And so you're urged to keep continuing to do things in a certain way. Maybe you're urged by your family. Maybe you're urged by your culture. Maybe you're urged by society, right? It's tradition. We all know what tradition is. And this particular full moon may bring this tradition to a culmination. It may bring this tradition kind of to a close. Or it's going to show you just how much this tradition is not only no longer serving you, but will not serve you in the future. And hence why the number one, as it is associated with independence, means that this particular full moon may have you veering away from tradition, veering away from a structure, veering away from a mindset, a system that you've relied on for a long time and that may have served you really well in the past. It's not to say that this system is garbage, it's trash, it's whatever. It just no longer serves you. It's almost like, I have not been in the military, but it's sort of, I'm aware of the fact that, when you tell veterans, thank you for your service, their service in the past helped you. It kept you safe, right? But now they're no longer of service in that way. So you can be thankful for that. You can be thankful for that tradition. You can be thankful for that structure because it did serve you in the past. And now it's time to be a little more independent. It's time to assert your independence. It's time to assert your autonomy and create a new structure for yourself. Create a new belief system. Create a new foundation that serves you and you alone going into the future. Okay. So it's really important that if you find that things are really coming to an end, especially something that you've been attached to for a long time, understand it served you well. And now you can put it down and now you can move to something else. This is not necessarily light work, nor is it necessarily easy. When we're talking about tradition and breaking tradition, that can feel difficult. Think of it this way. Let's say you have a huge family and every Christmas you guys gather at your parents' house. Let's say you're one of 8 siblings and every year for Christmas, everyone comes to your parental headquarters, your childhood home for Christmas. Now, okay. Now let's say over the last couple of years, you've gotten into a relationship and now you're married. Now you start having your own kids. Now you've got your partner's family, right? And maybe it doesn't necessarily make sense for you to keep going back to your parents' house every Christmas. So maybe you start a new tradition. Maybe you start hosting Christmas at your house. Or depending on your partnership, maybe you start spending Christmas with your partner's family. You know how difficult that's going to feel that very first Christmas? Because you're so used to everything being the same. Going to the same place, doing the same thing with the same people. And now you're doing something completely different. Maybe you're not even going to see your family at Christmas anymore. Or maybe you're not going to see all of your family at Christmas. And this is the tradition that you're starting because now you have your own situation. You have your own family, right? Think of how that feels at the outset. It feels different. It may feel scary. It may bring up feelings of fear or anxiety. What is my family going to think because I'm not doing this anymore? Or what is this new family going to think? Because now I'm starting a new tradition with them. This could be a time where a lot of your fears come up because things are changing. Structures are changing. Systems are changing. Traditions are changing. But think of how you're going to feel like 5 years from now, where you've settled into this new tradition that is likely more aligned with who you are now, right? To flesh out this analogy a little better, maybe going to Christmas at your parents' house over the last couple of years hasn't felt that good. Maybe you've turned into a different person. It's not to say that you don't love your family, you're not a part of your family anymore, but maybe you just don't necessarily relate to them in the same way. So every Christmas you started to get anxious because you're like, oh, I gotta go to my parents' house. They're gonna ask me this, they're gonna ask me that, or maybe the creepy uncle I don't like is gonna be there, and it brings up anxiety. That anxiety, that trepidation, that's probably your intuition telling you that this is no longer for you anymore. You're not throwing it away. You're not saying, oh, I don't care about my family anymore. That's trash. But it's like, that served me well at one point in my life. Now it's time to move on to new things. It's time to have new traditions. It's time to have a new foundation. I hope this isn't going over your head, and I hope that you're getting this, because this is an optimal time to change. And don't freak out either, right? This sounds like a lot. It kind of is. But remember, this is the first of 2 full moons in Capricorn. Now, they're not exactly going to be exactly the same. However, the themes are going to be the same. So if you're finding that it may be hard to turn things around, if you're finding that it's hard to sort of just out the gate start thinking about what new traditions you want to start, what new foundation you want to set for yourself, you kind of get 2 chances to do this. You get June and July to do this. So don't get like nervous, don't get proactive, don't be like, oh my God, I got to do it. Like, ease into this. The universe is giving you 2 chances at it. All right. So let's keep going with the numerology. So the tarot card associated with the number 1 is the Magician. And if you are familiar with tarot, the Magician not only has all the tools that he or she needs, but he or she can manifest whatever they want. That's why I say that the number 1 is pregnant with possibility. You are the magician in your wife. For some of you, that may be true. You are the magician in your life, and you have this magic wand that you can wave around and create whatever you want. And this full moon is showing you, all right, this is done now. So now the slate is clean. What are we going to create now? What are we going to do? So that's really, really important. Now, when it comes to other aspects of the number 1, the number 1 is masculine in nature. So it's all extroverted energy. It's all action-oriented energy. It's also ruled by the sun. I talked about the number 1 being associated with independence. The sun shines on its own. The sun is independent. The sun shines uniquely, right? So this is a time when you really have to examine what traditions or what foundations you've been relying on that are not yours, or that do not align with your current belief system. It's really important that you examine all of that at this full moon. And again, even though this is a full moon that's action oriented, we're not planting the seeds of this new tradition yet. Over the next 2 weeks, you're going to have the opportunity to get really clear on what you want this new tradition to look like. All right. So we're taking action, but we're kind of taking action more mentally and behind the scenes. Right. And we're also going to have the opportunity over the next 2 weeks to remove what does not align with this new tradition that we're trying to start. Okay, so definitely keep that in mind. Now, the last thing I'll say about the number 1 is that I like to examine, or I like to research what's called the Sabian symbols. And the Sabian symbols give an archetypal story for each degree of the zodiac. And so 1 degree of Capricorn is entitled 3 Stained Glass Windows in a Gothic Church, 1 Damaged by War. Okay. So essentially, this Sabian symbol shows the need to have a strong sense of self, a strong constitution, or a clear cause, or a clear sense of belief in the goodness of the world. So you have 3 stained glass windows, 1 is damaged by war. So it means that you have to replace 1. Now, you could either go with the old design or you can go with a new one. Either way, the Sabian symbol symbolizes the need for a strong sense of self, a strong sense of individuality, a strong sense of autonomy and self authority so that you can begin a new tradition. All right. It is a beautiful time to start. I'm saying start something new, but like I said, the full moon is about observation. It's not about planting seeds. But the full moon is showing you, it's like giving you a preview of what can come because it's showing you the reality of what no longer serves you, of what has served its purpose, of what has come to a culmination. Okay? It's beautiful. And even if this full moon in Capricorn isn't signifying an ending for you, it's going to show you how things have really been operating. It's almost like it's gonna show you how the sausage is really made. And maybe you don't want all of those byproducts. Maybe you don't want all of that fakeness. Maybe you don't want things to operate in the way that they've been operating anymore. So, hence why it's time for change. It's time for change on a very independent and autonomous level. All right. So now that we've talked about the numerology, let's talk about the astrology and see exactly what is going on. All right. So, in terms of the astrology, so you will know that full moons are when the sun and the moon are opposite, right? So, the sun is currently in Cancer and the moon will be in Capricorn. And full moons denote balance because they show us perhaps where things in our lives are imbalanced. So, you want to look at the axis between Capricorn and Cancer. Which house is Capricorn for you? Which house is Cancer? And it's going to show you perhaps where you need more balance. So, going back to my example from before, right? You've got Capricorn is your 10th house, which means that you're an Aries rising. Capricorn is your 10th house, Cancer is your 4th house. The axis of Capricorn and Cancer have a lot to do with your public life, as evidenced by Capricorn, and your private and your home life as evidenced by Cancer. So, wherever Capricorn and Cancer are in your natal chart, there's going to be that undercurrent of public work life on the one end and home, family, and private life on the other. And what kind of balance or imbalance are you experiencing in this axis of your life? So, maybe you have been super, super, super consumed with work or your reputation or your business even, right? And that's where you've been putting most of your energy. This full moon in Capricorn is going to show you perhaps how you have not been taking care of home. Perhaps you've been neglecting your family. Perhaps you've been neglecting your physical space and what that really looks like. Maybe your home is a complete mess. Maybe your family isn't talking to you. Maybe there's dissension at home, right? The full moon is going to show you exactly what is going on so you can restore balance. And that's going to be extremely important because it is when we are balanced that things typically tend to work a little better. If you are at either extreme, you're going to feel the pull from the other extreme that you are not paying attention to. So, balance is going to be the name of the game with this full moon. Now, in terms of the astrology, we've got the moon opposite Venus. So, Venus is currently in Cancer. So, when it comes to our closest relationships and the emotions that fuel those relationships, our desire for work, notoriety, our desire to cross that finish line, to use my example from before, may show us where our closest relationships are lacking or may show us where we haven't been giving enough emotional attention to our closest relationships. Essentially, it'll show us where we haven't necessarily been nurturing our closest relationships, okay? Now, Venus doesn't always have to do with relationships. It also has to do with money. So this could sort of show us how our money situation maybe isn't looking the best. It may have us being a little pessimistic about our money situation. Okay. It may show us the challenges that we're facing with our money at this time. Or perhaps where we've been so focused on others, or we've been so focused on other things that we haven't necessarily paid attention to our money, our stability, right? Our foundation. That's one way how this transit can sort of enlighten us, right? And then it's just going to be emotional. Venus in Cancer is emotions, right? Especially as they relate to money and relationships. So this may be a very emotional moon because it's going to show you how things may not be working that well. Maybe you've been trying to cross the finish line, right? To use my example of before, but maybe midway through the marathon, you fell and you injured yourself. And now the race is over and you realize that you didn't get to cross the finish line and the emotions that come up with it. Allow however you're feeling to come to the surface. However you're feeling, let yourself feel that way and use it as information to see, okay, this is where I need to make some changes. Or maybe this sort of training schedule, to again use my example, this training schedule really didn't help me because I ended up injuring my knee. Now it's time to have a new training schedule, a new rehabilitation schedule, a new sleep schedule, even that'll help me cross that finish line the next time, right? So again, whatever comes up, whatever we are seeing for whatever it is, the reality of the situation, allow yourself to feel however you're feeling so that you can now make changes, which is all about what the next 2 weeks are going to be about. And then finally, the moon is going to be square to Neptune. Okay. And this is going to make things a little wonky. If you listen to the weekly astro forecast that I did on Monday, I talked about how Neptune is smoke and mirrors and how it's like distorting how we see things. This is going to be very important, okay? Because remember I said we've got 2 weeks between the full moon and the next new moon to figure out what this new tradition is going to be, right? It's good to wait those 2 weeks because if you were to take action now at the full moon, right? It's like you're seeing things, but you're not necessarily seeing things clearly. Allow the fog to dissipate. Okay. Allow the funhouse mirror, allow yourself to get away from the funhouse mirror so you can truly see things for what they are. Okay. Lots of fog, lots of illusion, perhaps maybe even a little delusion. And this may be playing with you. This may be tugging at, your mind, right? Because you're being shown what's real, but maybe you don't want to believe it. Maybe you don't want to admit that you didn't train hard enough, which is why you didn't cross that finish line. Or maybe you don't want to admit that your house and your life are a mess because you've just really been focusing on everything on the outside. Maybe you don't want to believe it, but it's true. Okay? It's true. And, they say the truth kind of hurts. And for some, Moon Square Neptune may have you wanting to sugarcoat the truth, may have you wanting to escape from the truth, may have you wanting to put on rose-colored glasses and be like, la, 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 la. I know this is what's going on, but I don't want to address it. If it hurts a little bit, it's probably because it's true. And again, this isn't to shame you. This isn't making you feel bad, right? Just because you didn't cross the finish line doesn't mean that you're not successful. Doesn't mean that you're not a successful person. Doesn't mean that you can't cross the finish line. It just means that everything that you've done up to this point hasn't gotten you over the finish line. So what can you do to change? That's the essence of this full moon in Capricorn. What can you do to change so you can cross that finish line the next time? So use it as information to fuel this new beginning that is fastly approaching. And so between the full moon and the upcoming new moon in Cancer that's going down in July, you're going to divest yourself of whatever is not working. So whatever information you are gaining at this full moon is going to tell you, all right, I'm going to beat this example to the ground, but I feel like it makes sense in a way that we can all understand. You didn't cross the finish line. You fell midway during the marathon and you shattered your knee. Maybe you didn't have enough of the right diet. Maybe your diet wasn't the best. Maybe you weren't training. Maybe you were relying on someone else's workout regimen instead of crafting one for yourself. Maybe you relied on what everyone else was doing to prepare for this marathon, but it doesn't necessarily work for you. Over the next 2 weeks, you're going to have the opportunity to realize what's not working and then get rid of it. Whether it's a mindset, whether it's a belief, whether it's a tradition, whether it's a physical thing. Maybe the running shoes that you had while you were running this race misaligned your, I don't know, your bones, or misaligned your footing, which caused you to fall. So now maybe these sneakers have to go. Now you can get new ones. Maybe you have to go to a specialty shoe shop, right? Don't they have those specialty running sneaker stores where you can get like fitted for like a running shoe that's made perfectly for how your foot is designed? Maybe that's what you need to do so that you won't fall again, so that your stride will be more evenly, so that the weight of your stride will be more evenly distributed. So now you're not going to fall next time. I hope you understand what I mean by this, is that now you're realizing this hasn't worked, this hasn't worked, this hasn't worked. So now you can start implementing a whole bunch of new things. The sky is the limit with this full moon, in the sense that it'll show you what you no longer need, what's done, what has served its time, what has served its purpose. All right. So now let's move into manifestation and talk a little bit about that as it relates to this full moon. All right. So when I talk about the manifestation process, and I think I mentioned this earlier, the new moon is when you're planting seeds. That's when you're setting intentions, right? And the full moon is when those seeds come to fruition. So to use an example, at the new moon, you planted an apple seed. At the full moon, it's an apple tree. And now there is a fully formed apple that you can pick off the tree and enjoy. So the full moon phase is about observation and it's about enjoyment, especially with a full moon in Capricorn. Again, had you crossed the finish line, right? If this is a full moon that is signifying an ending of some sort, it's a time for celebration. It's a time for recognition. It's a time for appreciation for the work that you've done. Even if you haven't done the work, even if you haven't crossed the finish line, you can appreciate the fact that you know what you need to change. So there's no planting seeds right now. Even though this full moon is happening at the first degree of Capricorn, which is action oriented, we're going to take action to remove what we don't need. And we're going to do that over the next 2 weeks. But this is not the time for planting seeds. This is the time for sort of figuring out what seeds you want to plant at the next new moon, right? But it's a time of appreciating where you are at in the journey. And this is going to make a lot more sense when I talk about the messages from spirit in a little bit, because it's a cycle, right? And you got to appreciate where you're at currently in the cycle, whether you're at the finish line, whether you didn't make it to the finish line, or whether you realize you've got to go all the way back to the starting point. There's appreciation in that information, because now you know. And when you know better, you do better. So now, whether it's we graduated high school, magna cum laude, right? We were valedictorian. Now we're going off to this college and doing all this wonderful things, whatever, right? Or maybe you didn't graduate. Maybe you got to go to summer school. But now you know what you need to do so you don't repeat that. And that's so you can go off to college and do all the things. So whenever we have the full moon, I always feel like it's a time of appreciation. It's observation and appreciation. See what comes up. Because here's the thing that I'll also say about the full moon phase in terms of manifestation. Sometimes the seeds that we plant at the new moon sprout into something that we didn't necessarily expect. And not to say that what is sprouting or what has come to fruition is bad. It just may be very different from the idea of what we thought it would be. And a lot of times, that can be, not a lot of times, all the time, it's a good thing, because maybe it's better than what you expected. Or even if it's not better, maybe it's different, but that difference is really more in alignment with what you really need. Sometimes what we think about and what we want to come about limits us. And at the full moon stage, sometimes the universe surprises us and gives us more than we expected, better than we expected, or things that are more in alignment with who we are. So, either way, whatever transpires at this particular full moon, appreciate what you are being shown. You don't have to stay there. You don't have to shame yourself. You don't have to feel guilty about what didn't happen or what did happen. It's information that'll take you to the next level regardless. It served its purpose, it has served its time, and now it's time to move on. It's a beautiful time of illumination and enlightenment, either way. All right. So you definitely want to keep that in mind. All right. So now let's get into the messages that Spirit has for us for this full moon in Capricorn. All right. So when I got these messages, they were kind of choppy. And what I want to say with that is that they seem like they're kind of short and to the point. And I was told that they're like that because these are messages like it's not just you're going to hear this and then that's it. These are kind of going to be planting seeds within your mind that you can meditate and sort of marinate on, okay? So this isn't so much about okay, I'm saying this is what it means. Sort of what is your interpretation of these messages? How do these messages resonate with you? Remember I said this full moon is sponsored by the number one, which is all about autonomy and independence. Just because I'm giving you these messages and I'm saying certain words doesn't mean that that's exactly how it's going to transpire for you. Essentially, what I'm trying to say is figure out how this resonates for you and then let that message develop. Okay. Now, one of the messages that has come through a lot over the last couple of days has been this message of phases and cycles. We tend to look at life very linearly, right? A plus B equals C. I start here, the finish line is over there. I got to go from here to there. Life, the universe, it's not linear per se. It's cyclical, it's cycles. As soon as you get to the finish line, you're right back at the starting point, right? Doesn't it feel that way, especially in school? You get out of kindergarten, you got to go to first grade. You get out of elementary school, you got to go to middle school. You got out of middle school, you got to go to high school. It's like there's constant school. And then once you get out of college, even if you don't go to a grad program or a doctorate program, now you're in the school of life. Like school never ends. All right. It's cyclical. Okay. That's how things work. So phases and cycles. It's important. Actually, it's vital to acknowledge and honor the cycles in your life. Remember that cycles aren't linear and neither is your path. Okay. Things aren't cut and dry. This, point A to point B, it's cyclical. So what does your cycle look like? And where in your cycle are you? What phase of your cycle are you in? In life in general, okay? Because one of the things that I've learned on my spiritual journey is that even with astrology, whatever's going on in the sky right now will always affect all of us, but it affects us in different ways because we are in different cycles, we're in different phases. Just like, every New Year's, you always find people say, New Year, new me. However, that particular year may not be the year for new shit. Maybe it's a continuation year. Maybe it's a year where you're experiencing endings. Maybe it's a year where you're growing or maybe you're decreasing. Everything is cyclical and is subject to a phase. So, where are you in your cycle and what phase are you in? When you get clear on that, everything will start to make sense. Even these forecasts that I give you, it's general, right? It's general information. But knowing what phase and what cycle you are in helps you understand what comes next. Okay. Moving on to a new phase, kind of when you go from childhood to puberty to adulthood. And this just reiterates what I was saying before. But this development phase, right, is really a strong message at this full moon. Now, this full moon is ruled, it's in Capricorn. Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. When we talk about the body, Saturn is our skeletal system. And what immediately came to mind when I was getting these messages were growing pains. You know how when you experience a growth spurt from childhood to puberty, right? Sometimes it physically hurts because your bones are stretching. You're actually getting taller. You're being stretched. Your skeletal system is elongating, right? That kind of hurts sometimes. So when you know what phase you're in, right? And if you're looking at people who have crossed the finish line and you're beating yourself up because you're like, oh my God, I was supposed to cross the finish line and I didn't. You're at a phase where you weren't meant to cross the finish line yet. Maybe you were meant to fall midway because that's the phase that you're in right now. And as bittersweet as that may be, it's the reality. Your phase is your phase. Honor and acknowledge the phase that you are in. Growing pains can be bittersweet. Puberty is tough, but a necessary part of becoming who you are meant to be. Puberty is awkward as fuck, isn't it? Like, you're in this in-between phase where, especially if you're a guy, like your voice is cracking, you start getting hair in weird places, your body starts to smell different, you have all of these emotions that you don't know how to process. Is part of the process. And it's actually a beautiful process when you think about it, not when you're in it. After you've had your puberty glow up and now you look like what you're supposed to look like and you're settled in that, right? You can look back and say, puberty, it was necessary. It sucked, but I understand the process. I understand the phase that I was in. For some of you, you're in your puberty right now. You're in that phase where you're starting to get your independence. You're starting to veer away from certain things and it feels awkward. To go back to my example of, you spending Christmas at your family's house. Remember I said that first year or even those first couple of years where you start that new tradition, it feels kind of weird, right? Like puberty almost. You're veering away from what you've been told to do, what you've been taught to do, what you've been conditioned to do, and now you're doing something different and you're beginning the process of getting comfortable in that awkwardness. That may be what this full moon may be showing you or teaching you or alerting you to the fact that that's what's coming. Okay. You're on the right track. Keep doing what you're doing and keep moving forward. That is very self-explanatory. Even if it feels awkward, even if it feels weird, even if you didn't quite make it across the finish line, you're on the right track. Keep going. Mental breakthroughs, establishing a new foundation, system, and structure for yourself. Something is finally coming to an end. This may be a time of breakthroughs. I talked about the number one being groundbreaking energy. Think of it as almost like an earthquake. And it's just like, whoa, like things, maybe, perhaps the foundation that you have been accustomed to is crumbling even without, like, it's not like you're doing it intentionally. Something you've relied on just isn't going to be here anymore. The tradition is broken, not by a fault or your own intention, right? Let's use this as an example. Maybe there is, the example that I'm getting right now is pretty extreme, but I think it's something that you may understand. Let's say that you've been indoctrinated into a particular faith, right? And your grandparents were in this faith. Your parents were in this faith. They brought you and your siblings up in this faith. Like, that's what you grew up with. And then this full moon in Capricorn shows you that maybe an authority figure in this religion, in this faith, in this organization has done some really fucked up shit. And it rocks your beliefs to the core because you're like, I looked up to this person. This person was supposed to be X, Y, and Z, and now they're not. And like mentally, you can't even necessarily rely on, it's almost like when you've been lied to and you realize that you've been lied to and how you can't even trust what you were taught or what you were told because you don't know if it was a lie. That's that groundbreaking energy that's going to push you in another direction. And it wasn't you didn't intend for that to happen, but maybe it happened so that you could move in a new direction that's more in alignment with who you are. I know that was an extreme example, but hopefully that makes sense. Okay. In this new phase or cycle, peace, harmony, fun, and lighthearted energy should be the focus. You don't have to approach things so seriously. And this is another message that I've been receiving over the last week. Remember, I said before, Capricorn and Saturn energy, it's very sobering, it's very real, it's very serious. So now maybe the foundation or maybe the tradition that you're setting for yourself is rooted in fun and lighthearted energy. It speaks to your inner child. It allows you to be playful, right? That is important. We don't always have to take things so seriously. We don't have to think of everything as, this dire, detrimental situation. We don't always, contrary to popular belief, we don't always have to be adulting in the traditional sense. A lot of what we need to do in terms of adulting is really having fun and being childlike. So maybe that's this new tradition that you are establishing for yourself. That you're going to follow your fun, you're going to follow your passion, you're going to follow your desire and see where it takes you. You've been patient long enough. It's time to take action and remember that you're on the right track. So in this new phase, it's time to be more action oriented. Maybe you've been waiting. Maybe, you've been playing it safe and being cautious. In this next new phase, it's going to be about taking bold action. The other interpretation that I got for this message was that a lot of times we're very much aware that spirit is cooking things behind the scenes. Spirit is like mixing things up. The meal isn't done yet. This full moon is talking about that spirit's done cooking. The meal is finished. We can now enjoy it and move on. Okay. Next. In this new phase or cycle, following your passion and having fun aren't bad things. And it doesn't mean that you're slacking off or that you're not serious. Following what excites you raises your vibration, and that's what gets you what you want. I personally have struggled with this because many of us, myself included, have had the belief that to succeed, it's got to be hard. It's got to be a struggle. It's got to be a lot of hard work, a lot of seriousness, a lot of adulting, right? And when I do things that feel good, when I do things that are fun, it kind of feels weird, right? Or it feels like I'm doing something wrong, or I'm being lazy, or I'm not taking things seriously. That is so far from the truth. When we engage in what feels oppressive, what feels serious, right? It lowers our vibration and kind of takes us farther away from what we want. Now, it's not to say that there are times where we have to do things that we don't necessarily find fun or exciting. However, the premise should be to follow your passion, have fun, follow what excites you, that gets you to your destination and that gets you crossing the finish line a lot sooner and in a much better state. Okay. A lot of times we succeed at things, right? We cross the finish line, but how do we feel when we cross that finish line? Tired as fuck, right? Burnt out, exhausted, either mentally or physically. We cross the finish line, but we don't necessarily feel good about it. And it leads us to not being able to appreciate the fact that we crossed the finish line because we're so damn tired. Because we've been trudging through the mud. We've believed that we had to achieve this thing, that we had to get it out the mud, that we had to struggle, that it had to be hard. And so that's exactly what life presented to us, right? The universe says your wish is my command. So if you believe that this is going to be hard, this is going to be a struggle, it's going to take forever, the universe is like, all right, cool. Like you'll get there, but you're going to be tired as fuck when you get there. Meanwhile, if you were just to have fun, follow your passion, follow your excitement, not only would you cross the finish line, but you'd feel good when you do. And when you feel good when you do, you appreciate it. And when you appreciate it, the universe gives you more to appreciate. So maybe the tradition that's being broken at this full moon is that things don't have to be so hard. Things don't have to be such a struggle. Things don't have to be arduous work. You can have fun and still get what you want, still be successful, still cross that finish line and feel good when you do. Okay? Being serious doesn't always mean success. And I think this just goes back to what I just said. Just because you're doing things seriously, just because you're struggling doesn't mean that you're going to get what you want to get. This is very evident when it comes to relationships. A lot of times in relationships, we feel like we have to put up with shit. Love is hard. Love hurts. No, it doesn't. Love is the opposite. Love is fun. Love feels good. Love is passionate. It's exciting. Following your excitement will still get you to where you want to go better and probably faster. And the final message, no regrets. No regrets. Mourn what's ending and let it go. It has served you well. It's okay to be nostalgic, but living in the past won't make your future arrive any faster. No regrets. If you fell down and you didn't reach the finish line, that's fine. You can get up and still push it forward and cross that finish line eventually. Don't regret whatever has happened or hasn't happened or has transpired in the past. It's gotten you to this point. And even if this point is where you don't want to be, at least you know this is where you don't want to be. And that is good. You know, I've had one of the things that has really changed my life is that I've given a different definition to the things that have happened in my life. If I were to tell people some of the things that I've been through, people would be like, oh, your life is over. I've actually been told that. Oh, you can't move forward from this. Your life is over. No, it's not. You know why? Because I defined those negative moments as positive moments that either taught me something or showed me something that I need to see or know to move to where I want to go. Therefore, I don't regret what has happened in my life, what I've experienced, whether it was self-inflicted or otherwise. I don't regret anything because everything works to my advantage. Everything works to my favor. And the same can be true for you if that's a belief that you will adopt. The problem is that it becomes more difficult to cross the finish line because we're saddled with guilt and shame. Maybe we did fall midway through the race, right? And now we've crossed the finish line, but we've crossed the finish line last. And we're just like, oh my gosh, I came in last. Oh my gosh, I came in last. This is so not what I want. It's so embarrassing. That's because you deemed that fall, that setback as a negative thing. And you don't have to. So no regrets. Whatever has transpired, let it go. It has served you well. If you're willing to look at the lesson, at the information that it gave you, then it truly has served you well, so you can put it down. All right, my loves. That concludes this video on the upcoming full moon in Capricorn. I sincerely hope that you were able to get at least one important piece of information that you can use going into this full moon. All right. If you need information on my products and services, everything is either linked to the video or in the description box below. Thank you so much for tuning in. Happy full moon in Capricorn, and I will see you in my next video. All right, my loves. Take care.